For Super Sonico's cat hoodie, I'm using McCall's pattern 4261. I'm using view A, and that ended up being a little short for my liking. So while I was cutting out the front part of the jacket, I added a little bit to the bottom and then made it flare out a bit more. The nice thing about fleece is that it's really forgiving, so even if your lines aren't completely straight, it still will make a nice looking garment in the end. I also altered the back of the jacket so that it would have the bit of flare and additional length, and also changed it so that there would be a center back seam. I then used my camouflage pieces as a pattern to cut out the tangerine colored fleece lining. Now that the base pieces of the jacket are cut out, we're going to sew the two pieces together along the tops of the sleeves. So from there to there, and then from there to there. Next, we're going to put the right sides of the fabric together and then sew along the armhole. Now, putting the right sides together, we're going to sew along the center back seam of the orange lining. Now it's time to make the tail for the jacket. I folded the fabric in half and then made a straight line with a curve at the end. This is going to be the end of the tail. And now it's pinned together, and I'm going to sew all the way around the curve and then down the straight line, leaving this end open so I can fill it with fiber fill. The tail has been turned inside out, so it is now a tube with one end closed, and now it's time to fill it with polyfill. Now we sew the tail along the center of one of the back pieces. Now we will sew the two camouflage back pieces together along the center back seam, with the tail sandwiched in between them. On their own, these steps can be a little confusing when you just see them as little video segments. So let's take a break and see what the costume looks like so far. Right now, we have the back pieces attached together. It's kind of like a flap with a tail attached. Underneath, the two orange pieces are connected in the center. Up top, the front and back pieces are connected at the shoulder, and they are also sewn together along the armhole. In the front, you have more pretty much just flaps of the orange and of the camouflage. Now, let's get back to sewing. Take the bottom edges of the back piece and turn them so that the right sides are facing each other. Now, we will sew them together along the bottom hem. Now that the two edges have been sewn together, it's time to turn them right side out so that now it's a nice clean hem. The next step is to do the same thing for the front pieces. So we're going to turn them so that the right sides are together and we're going to sew them down the front seam, or the front hem rather, and then along the bottom. With the front edges sewn together, it's time to turn this portion right side out. Remember, before you turn it out, clip the corner off the edge here. That'll keep there from being a kind of wad of fabric in the corner after it's been turned right side out. For the next step, we are going to attach the front and back portions together. Turn your pieces so that the right sides are facing each other. And begin pinning them together. This is what it looks like with the right sides pinned together. You won't be able to pin them completely together because there'll have to be an opening, so you can keep pulling the fabric through as you sew it. After you sew along your pinned line, there will be a little bit of an opening left, and that's fine. It's supposed to look like that. What you'll do is you'll take a bit of orange thread and just hand sew the hole closed. For the hood of the hoodie, I used the pattern that came with the rest of the jacket patterns. I kept the bottom hem of the hood the same so that it'll match with the rest of the jacket, and then I added length around the top and a little bit to the front. This is because I'm going to need the hood to be big enough to go over my head while wearing a wig and a set of headphones. So I needed the hood to be large enough to cover all of that. I used the camouflage hood piece as a pattern to cut out the orange hood pieces and then pin them together. Remember, right sides together. And now we're going to sew both hoods along the long curved edge. I'm going to sew both pieces together along like that. For the kitty ears on the top of her hoodie, cut out two pieces that are kind of a rounded triangle with a flat bottom. Then cut out the center piece, and this can be used to create the pattern for the fleece insides. Remember to leave enough space around the edges so that you can have seam allowance. Pin the two pieces together so that the right sides are facing each other, and sew along the curved edge, and then turn it inside out, and you'll get a nice cute cat ear. Super Sonico's kitty ears are three-dimensional, so now that we have the front of the ear, we're going to cut two pieces for the side of the ear. This length is equivalent to the edge of the ear, plus a little bit extra for seam allowance. And then these two pieces, we're going to put right sides together, and then sew along the curved edge. Now that the two side pieces are sewn together along the curved edge, we're going to go along the straight edge and attach it to the front of the kitty ear. So it's going to be pinned together like this, right sides together, and then after it's sewn and you turn it right side out, it will look like this. Now we're going to cut another triangle with one straight edge and then two curved edges, and that's going to be the bottom of the cat ear. And you're going to pin it and sew it onto the bottom of the base ear that you already made. And just like sewing the rest of the hoodie, you're not going to be able to completely sew around it because then you can't turn it inside out or outside in. So we're going to leave a little tiny hole on one side, and so you're just going to sew around like that, and then going to get an ear. Looks kind of like this. Here's the little hole that was used to turn it around, and we're going to use this hole and fill the ear with fiberfill. After the ear is stuffed, you're going to hand sew the opening closed, and then lay your hoodie out flat and position your ear onto your hoodie. And now you're going to sew along the bottom edge all the way around the ear and hand sew it onto the hood. After you're done hand sewing the ears onto the hood, sew the orange and blue camouflage pieces together along the outer edge, leaving an opening at the bottom. Then cut a piece of the fake sheepskin fabric and have it become narrower towards the edge, and then sew that along the outer edge. After machine sewing the white fluffy piece to the hood, then hand sew a hem along the remaining edge. After that's complete, you can start hand sewing the fleece and the fluffy part together. Depending on the size you made your trim, you may want to put a little bit of fiberfill in it to make it extra poofy. Now you're going to pin the hood to the rest of the jacket with right sides together, leaving a little hole, just like you did when attaching the front and back portions of the jacket base. Okay, now that the hood is fully attached, it's time to close the little hole that was left over from sewing the two sides together. I'm going to be hand sewing it closed with just a little bit of orange thread. I'm going to be sewing it 2 times, so I'm going to be lining up the center seams, sewing from the center out, and then from the center out that way. This is to ensure that these 2 pieces line up in the middle, because fleece likes to stretch, so it can pull back and forth and make your lines a little bit crooked. And here is the Sonico hoodie so far. And little tail on the back. All that's left is to just add a couple more details, and then we're done. Fleece is a great fabric to work with, but it does have a tendency to poof a little bit. So, to give the jacket a nice finishing touch, we're going to top stitch. So, going to use some pins and pin the 2 layers together just to keep them in place, and then we're going to do a straight stitch and sew all the way down along the edge. We're also going to do this around the armhole. Here's a little trick for the top stitching. For Sonico's jacket, the outside's blue and the inside is orange. And to make it so that the thread matches no matter which side you're looking at, since we're sewing with the blue portion on top, the top thread of the machine is going to be blue, and then the underside, the bobbin, if you can see in there, is orange. And because the machine feeds thread from 2 different places, that way the stitching that appears on the underside of the jacket will be orange, and the stitching that appears on the top will be blue. Now it's time to make the little pom-poms on Sonico's jacket. First you're going to start by making your pattern. It's kind of a rounded diamond teardrop shape. And then you're going to cut 4 pieces out of your fake sheepskin material. And you're going to need 4 of the little diamonds per pom-pom. Next, you take your pom-pom and you're gonna kind of smush the fleecy bits into the fabric. That way when you turn it right side out, there won't be a bare spot along the seam. And then you're going to hand sew along the outer edge. So it's going to look kind of like that. And then when you turn it inside out, see, you can barely even see where it was sewn. Keep sewing the pieces together until you have a little puff. And you're going to leave a little spot open at one of the edges so you can turn it around and stuff it. Here's one of the pom-poms already turned right side out and stuffed, and now you're just going to hand sew along the edge. For the strap for the pom-poms, I cut a piece of bias tape to the desired length. Bias tape is often folded, so I just did one straight stitch along the middle to keep it from coming unfolded, and then folded over one end of the bias tape and then stitched along it, and this is the spot that's going to be attached to the hoodie. Now, you can take your pom-pom that has the little opening, insert your bias tape on one end, and then you'll hand sew it shut. Next, I hand sewed the pom-pom cord onto the jacket, right where the fake sheepskin fabric meets the rest of the jacket. And now, it's all done.